Lucille Ball was standing on the most famous soundstage in America when she did something that could have destroyed her career forever. It was October 14th, 1962. The cameras were rolling. The live studio audience was laughing. Everything was perfect. And then Lucille Ball heard two words that made her blood run cold. She stopped the entire production. Not during a commercial break. Not after the show. Right there in front of 300 people and millions watching at home. What she did in the next 11 minutes would never be broadcast. The network executives tried to bury it. The sponsors demanded silence. But the people who were there that day never forgot what they witnessed because Lucille Ball, the most powerful woman in television, the comedian who made America laugh every single week, did something that no one in Hollywood had ever done before. She risked everything she had built, her empire, her reputation, her legacy, all because of one young woman standing in the shadows of that studio. A woman whose name has never been told until now. The person who spoke those hateful words that day was not some stranger. It was someone Lucy trusted, someone she had invited into her own studio. And what Lucy discovered about this person would shake her to her core. But here is what makes this story truly unforgettable. The young woman who was targeted by that slur did not want revenge. She did not want justice. What she wanted was something far more powerful, something that would transform everyone in that room forever. And what Lucille Ball did next did not just become Hollywood legend. It became a blueprint for courage that the world still needs today. It was a crisp autumn morning at Desilu Studios in Hollywood. The air smelled of fresh coffee and cigarette smoke as the crew prepared for another episode of The Lucy Show. Lucille B., 51 years old and at the height of her power, walked onto the soundstage wearing her signature blue dress. She was not just the star of the show. She was the owner of the entire studio, the first woman in television history to run a major production company. Among the crew that day was a 23-year-old woman named Eleanor Wilson. Eleanor was a costume assistant, one of only 4 black employees at the entire studio. She had worked her way up from nothing, taking 3 buses every morning from South Central Los Angeles just to be there. Eleanor was quiet. She was hard work. She never complained. She had learned early in life that being invisible was the safest way to survive in a world that did not want to see her. Also in the studio that day was a man named Howard Chambers. He was 44 years old, a senior advertising executive from one of the show's biggest sponsors. Howard had flown in from New York specifically to observe production. He wore an expensive gray suit and a confident smile. Howard represented money. In 1962 Hollywood, money talked louder than morals, and Howard knew it. The morning rehearsal went smoothly. Lucy hit every mark. The jokes landed perfectly. The director called for a 15-minute break before they would film the first scene with a live audience. Eleanor was adjusting a rack of costumes near the back of the stage when Howard Chambers walked past her. He stopped. He looked her up and down. And then he said something to his assistant that Eleanor was never supposed to hear. But someone else heard it, too. Someone with fiery red hair and a temper to match. And in that moment, the most powerful woman in television made a decision that would change everything. If you are feeling the story, hit that like button right now, because what happens next is something you will never forget. The words Howard spoke were sharp and ugly. He used a slur that had been used to dehumanize black Americans for centuries. Then he laughed and added, "I cannot believe they let these people work here now. What is next letting them on camera?" His assistant chuckled nervously. Eleanor stood frozen, her hands gripping the costume rack, so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had heard words like this before. She had learned to swallow the pain, to keep working, to stay invisible. But she could not stop the single tear that rolled down her cheek. Lucille Ball was 20 feet away, reviewing her script with the director. She had not been meant to hear. But in the sudden quiet of the break, Howard's voice carried farther than he realized. Lucy's head snapped up. Her famous blue eyes locked onto Howard Chambers. Then they moved to Eleanor, who was desperately trying to disappear behind the costume rack. The director noticed the change immediately. "Lucy, everything okay?" She did not answer. She was watching Eleanor, watching the tear, watching a young woman try to make herself small enough to survive. Lucy set down her script. She removed her clip-on earrings. She straightened her spine. The crew members who knew her recognized these signs. Something was about to happen. "Lucy," the director said quietly, "the audience is waiting. We need to start filming in 5 minutes." "The audience," Lucy said slowly, "can wait." She began walking toward Howard Chambers. Her heels clicked against the studio floor like a countdown. Every crew member stopped what they were doing. The soundstage fell completely silent. Howard saw her coming. His confident smile flickered. "Miss Ball, what a pleasure. I was just telling my assistant how impressive your operation is here." Lucy stopped directly in front of him. When she spoke, her voice was ice. "I heard exactly what you told your assistant. Every single word. And now you're going to hear from me." Howard's face went pale. "Miss Ball, I do not know what you think you heard, but I assure you—" "Stop talking." Lucy's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You do not get to explain. You do not get to minimize. You said what you said. And now every person in this room knows exactly who you are." She turned to face the entire crew. Over 60 people stood frozen watching. "Everyone, I need your attention. This man," she pointed at Howard, "just used a racial slur to describe one of our team members. He called her that word. Then he questioned whether she deserved to even work here." Gasps rippled through the crew. Eleanor covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide. Howard stepped forward, his face flushing red. "Now wait just a minute. I represent the Patterson Tobacco Company. We spend $2 million a year sponsoring your show. I cannot, what?" Lucy stepped closer to him. "I cannot stand up for the people who work for me. I cannot call out hatred when I see it. I cannot risk your precious money for something that actually matters." Her voice rose with each question. This was not the funny Lucy that America loved. This was a woman who had fought her entire life to be taken seriously, and she was not backing down. "Let me tell you something about money, Mr. Chambers. I have lost money before. I have been broke. I have been told I would never make it. But I have never, not once in my life, stayed silent when someone was being treated as less than human." She walked over to Eleanor, who was trembling. Lucy gently took her hand. "This is Eleanor Wilson. She has worked at the studio for 2 years. She arrives before everyone else and leaves after everyone else. She has never once complained about the fact that she makes less money than people doing the same job. She has never once mentioned that she is one of only 4 black employees in this entire building." Lucy's voice cracked slightly. "And do you know why she has never complained? Because people like you have taught her that her voice does not matter, that her pain does not count, that she should be grateful just to be allowed in the room." She turned back to Howard, her eyes blazing. "Well, I am here to tell you that her voice matters, her pain counts, and she is not here because we allowed her. She is here because she earned it." The crew began to murmur. Some were nodding. Some had tears in their eyes. Howard straightened his tie, trying to regain control. "Miss Ball, I think you're being emotional. This is business. Perhaps we should discuss this privately." Lucy smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a woman who was about to change everything. This is the moment everything changes. Keep watching to see what Lucy did that shocked the entire room. And if this story is hitting you in the heart, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. "No," Lucy said firmly. "We are not going to discuss this privately because hatred grows in private. It thrives in whispers and back rooms and polite silences." She released Eleanor's hand and walked to the center of the sound stage where everyone could see her clearly. "I am going to give you a choice, Mr. Chambers. Right here, right now, in front of all these witnesses." Howard crossed his arms defensively. "And what choice would that be? You can apologize to Eleanor, not to me, to her. You can look her in the eyes and acknowledge that she is a human being who deserves respect. And then you can stay and watch the rest of this production and see what real talent looks like." She paused. "Or you can leave, take your $2 million and walk out that door. But know this, if you choose to leave, every newspaper in this country will know why by tomorrow morning, because I will make sure of it." The room held its breath. Howard's assistant had turned completely white. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. Then something unexpected happened. Eleanor stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Miss Ball, may I say something?" Lucy nodded, her expression softening. Of course, Eleanor, this is your moment. Eleanor turned to face Howard. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was clear. Mr. Chambers, I have been called that word my whole life. By people on the street, by people who did not know me, by people who never took the time to see me as a person. She took a deep breath. I could hate you for what you said. A part of me wants to, but hate is heavy, Mr. Chambers, and I have carried enough weight in my life. Tears were streaming down faces throughout the studio. Even some of the hardened crew members were wiping their eyes. So, I'm going to choose something different. I am going to choose to believe that people can change, that hearts can soften, that tomorrow can be better than today. She looked directly into Howard's eyes. The question is, can you? The silence that followed was the longest 11 seconds in television history. Every person in that studio held their breath. The cameras had stopped rolling. The audience sat frozen in their seats. Even the lights seemed to dim, as if the universe itself was waiting to see what would happen next. Then Howard Chambers did something no one expected. His shoulders dropped. His defensive posture crumbled. The arrogance that carried him through boardrooms and business deals for 20 years melted away like frost in morning sunlight. And for the first time, he looked at Eleanor not as a category or a color, but as a human being. His eyes were wet. His hands were trembling. I am sorry, he said. His voice was barely above a whisper, cracking on each word. I am truly sorry, Miss Wilson. What I said was inexcusable. There is no defense for it. There is no explanation that makes it acceptable. He took a shaky breath. I was raised with beliefs that I never questioned. My father spoke that way. My grandfather spoke that way. I grew up thinking it was normal, thinking it was just how things were. He looked down at his expensive shoes, then back up at Eleanor. But standing here looking at you, seeing the dignity in your eyes, even after what I said, I realize how wrong those beliefs are. I realize how much damage words like mine have caused, how much pain they carry. The crew watched in stunned silence. No one had ever seen a man like Howard Chambers humble himself like this. He turned to Lucy. Miss Ball, I understand if you want to leave. I understand if you never want to see my face again, but if you will allow it, I would like to stay. Not as a sponsor, not as a businessman. I would like to stay as a student. I would like to learn. I would like to be better than I was 15 minutes ago. Lucy did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Eleanor. This is your call. Eleanor, not mine. He hurt you. You get to decide what happens next. The weight of that moment settled on Eleanor's shoulders. The entire room was watching her. The man who had dehumanized her was asking for forgiveness. She had every right to refuse, every right to demand he leave. Eleanor studied Howard's face for a long moment. She saw the tears. She saw the shame. And somewhere beneath all of that, she saw something else, a flicker of genuine remorse. Then she nodded slowly. Everyone deserves a chance to grow. That is what I believe. That is what my mother taught me. Stay, Mr. Chambers. But do not just watch what happens here today. See it. Feel it. Let it change you. The tension in the room broke like a fever. Someone in the back started clapping. Then another person. Then another. Within seconds, the entire crew was applauding. Some were crying. Some were embracing each other. Lucy walked over Eleanor and wrapped her in a tight hug. You just did something I could never have done, she whispered into Eleanor's ear. You showed grace when you had every right to show anger. That takes more strength than anything I have ever seen. Eleanor smiled through her tears. Someone had to teach him Miss Ball. And hate has never taught anyone anything worth learning. What happened in the weeks and months after this day is the most incredible part of this story. But first, if this message of choosing grace over hate resonates with you, leave a comment below telling me about a time when you chose forgiveness over revenge. I read every single comment. The episode filmed that day was never broadcast, but what happened next changed Hollywood forever. Lucille Ball promoted Eleanor Wilson to head of the costume department within 6 months, making her the first black woman to hold that position at any major studio. Eleanor stayed at Desilu for 18 more years. Howard Chambers returned to New York a different man. He personally ensured that Patterson Tobacco Company began hiring black executives, something unheard of in 1962. He and Eleanor exchanged letters until his death in 1989. Years later, a reporter asked Lucille Ball about that day. She said, "I did not stop the show to be brave. I stopped it because staying silent would have cost me something more valuable than any sponsor. It would have cost me my soul." When asked if she had any regrets, Lucy smiled. "My only regret is that it took someone saying something hateful for me to say something true. We should not wait for hate to speak before love finds its voice." Lucille Ball stopped her live show for 11 minutes, but the lesson of that day has echoed for 60 years and counting. She did not just become a Hollywood legend that day. She became proof that courage, when it meets compassion, can change the world one room at a time, one heart at a time, forever. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories that prove humanity's capacity for change. And remember, the next time you see injustice, you have the same choice Lucy made: silence or courage. The world is waiting to see which one you choose.